Question number 100. Okay, I don't know if we have discussed this in the previous video or not, but I'm gonna discuss it again here if I have discussed. So it's a drag and drop question. You have to drag and drop the relevant option in the relevant box. So the two boxes are given for data DEP, which is data execution prevention, and mandatory ASLR address space layout randomization. So I'm gonna put a link here. You can read about address space layout randomization. Uh, anyway, for the moment, you just we just go to the question. So you have 500 Windows 10 devices enrolled in Microsoft Intune, and you plan to use exploit protection. So exploit protection, it's like it is a security feature that you can enable in Intune, which helps you data execution prevention and force randomization for images. So you plan to use exploit protection in Microsoft Intune to enable the following system settings on the devices. So these are the settings that you want to enable: data execution prevention and force randomization for images, mandatory ASLR. You need to configure a Windows 10 device that will be used to create a template file. Now you want to create a template file using just one PC, or maybe yeah, just one PC. You can create a template file. So which protection areas on the device should you configure in the Windows security app before you create the template file? So before you create the template file, where you can configure these settings for data execution prevention, where can you configure this setting, and where can you configure the force randomization for images. So for data execution prevention, you need to choose one from here, and for mandatory ASLR, you need to choose one from here. Okay, so let's eliminate some of the options. So virus and threat protection. So we are not implementing any virus and threat protection. It is about data execution prevention and force randomization, which is to for exploit protection. So I believe these virus and protection is doesn't make any sense here related to this one. For we check for DEP, data execution prevention. And then device security is more about the devices itself, like maybe the passwords, and maybe something that's more related to the device itself. And then app and browser control and account protection is also not applicable here. You can't do this in the account. You can check by yourself. If you go to account protection and device security, if you create a template, you will notice that you can't do any of these settings there. So the only option we are left with app and browser control, and both of these settings, data execution prevention and force randomization for images, both of these settings can be they can be configured under apps and under app and browser control. I'm going to show you, I will add a source here which you can read and find how to where can you find these settings in Intune. So here are the settings. You can find enable exploit protection, and if you go to your Intune and then goes to in Intune Windows security app, so there you can do, okay, I think these are in your Windows, not in Intune. Yes, so it is asking for here, like for example, I'm going here for app and browser control. Yeah, so app and browser control, and there you go, app. Okay, so it's not those settings. I believe you have to do it in Intune. Control flow, got data, yes, data execution and force randomization, mandatory ASLR, so you can do these settings. All right, okay. Okay, so if you come to the question, it says here, this is very important, you need to configure a Windows 10 device that will be used to create a template file. Now you need only one computer to configure, and once you configure that computer with these settings, data execution, prevention, and force randomization for images, then you can take a template from that. You can export the template from that computer where you have done these settings, and then you can put that configuration file in Intune and deploy to all those 500 devices. So it now is asking which protection areas on the device, not in Intune, right? On the device should you configure in the Windows Security app before. So Windows Security app is in your device, right? Before you create the templates, you it's the same like we in the very first labs, I believe we created a template for the taskbar, and for the desktop icons, that then we for the background image as well, so we created a template, then we deployed that template to other computers. So it's the same template. You have to go to one PC and do these configuration settings on that PC, then export that template and implement to all those 500 devices. So those settings can be found in the Windows Security app. This is the Windows Security app, you can see here. And under system settings, so you see here exploit protection. In exploit protection, okay, what are the options we got? So the options we got, app and browser control. Okay, so it is asking that the data execution, prevention, and mandatory ASLR, where do we see these settings? So if we go to Windows Security, so this is the Windows Security, and the very first option you see here, app and browser control. So under app and browser control, you can go to exploit protection, and exploit under exploit protection you can find these settings. You see data execution, prevention, and force randomization, ASLR, right? Mandatory ASLR. So we don't have this option exploit protection. If you go exploit protection, so but we have app and browser. So exploit protection is can be found in app and browser control. So yes, both of these settings we can do in app and browser control. Yes, yeah, these are the correct answers. Okay, now let's go to question number 101. You have an Azure AD tenant named Cantoso.com. You have a workgroup computer named Computer1 that runs Windows 11. You need to add Computer1 to Cantoso.com, and what should you do? Okay, dsreg command, uh, computer management, net done the setting. Now if you see this question, it says you have an Azure AD tenant named Contoso.com, and you have a work group computer, which means that you have a work computer, right? Okay, an enterprise owned computer, and you want to join that computer to Contoso.com, which in other words, you want to join Azure, your computer to Azure AD, right? So where do we do those? We do that in the settings. If you go to your settings, we have done that many times before. If you go to your setting app, this is my setting app, and then I go to accounts, and under account you can find out um, you can find out access work or school. So one is registration and the other one is access. From here we can add, but I can't add my account to Azure AD because it is the Windows version it got is not supported. So anyway, that is the setting app. Okay, you can join Azure AD from a workgroup computer in the setting app. Right. Then let's go to question number 102. So you have Microsoft 365 subscription that use Microsoft Intune. So you use Microsoft Intune to manage Windows 11 devices. Okay, so that means Windows 11 devices are enrolled in Intune. You need to implement passwordless authentication that require users to use number matching, right? Now, which authentication method should you use? Now, it is very common in all of you are using this application which is Microsoft Authenticator. So you can use Microsoft Authenticator application to match the words, and you usually get a message, a notification, and when you open that notification, so it is asking you, so numbers will be shown on the screen here on your PC and on that app as well, and will ask you to choose the number which matches the number that is shown on your computer screen. And once you click the match number, you will be logged in automatically. So that can be done in Microsoft Authenticator, right? Okay, you question number 103. You use a Microsoft Intune subscription to manage iOS devices, and you configure a device compliance policy that blocks jailbroken iOS. Okay, so jailbroken iOS, you have seen those in device compliance policy. If you go to Intune, you have seen it probably. There you can see for Android device, if you create an Android device compliance policy, you can see the root devices block, but for iOS devices you will see jailbroken. So the terminology is different, but meaning is the same. Jailbroken or rooted devices are not secure, they're prone to attacks. Okay, so you need to enable enhanced jailbroken detection. If you under jailbroken, you can also this there you can also see enhanced jailbreak protection. Then what should you configure? So the compliance policy settings, the device compliance policy, and a network location. So network location is obviously, it is not related to any of these. Then a configuration profile. So configuration profile, you can't even do these settings in configuration profile. Now compliance policy settings, but it is a compliance policy settings, but which compliance policy? That is the device compliance policy. You need to do, you can do this configuration in device compliance policy. If you go to into your Intune, and you can go to device compliance policy, you can see that these two options, jailbroken and enhanced jailbreak detection. So the correct option is option B. So you have a Microsoft 365 subscription that contains two usernames named user1 and user2. You need to ensure that the user um, that the users can perform the following tasks. User 1 must be able to create groups and manage users. User 2 must be able to reset passwords for non-administrative users. Right, so you can okay, these are the options you've been given for user 1. So user 1, what user 1 must be do. Okay, remember this, this should be remembered. The solution must use the principle of least privilege. Least privilege means that they should be able to do only the necessary, they will have only the necessary privileges. If you say, for example, global administrator, or the full administrator, so that is not the least privilege. That means that if you assign the full administrator to both users, user 1 and user 2, they can perform these settings. But here we say no, they must be given the least privilege, which means if you give them full administrator roles or global administrator roles, then they can do more than these settings. Okay, so we want to restrict them as well to just a few options. Okay, so user one must be able to create groups and manage users. Now, which one of them should be user one? Global administrator. Global administrator is more roles and responsibilities. They can do more than just creating groups and manage users. A help desk administrator, so that is also not I'm gonna show you, it won't achieve the goal for user one, that has less privileges. Then security administrator, that I believe got more privileges, and user administrator. So let's have a look at this is the website. I'm gonna add the source of this website. So we have global administrator and user administrator. Now if you see, global administrator has unlimited access to all management features and most data in all admin centers, right? And these are the features, these are the permissions that global admin has. And we said that in the question they said that you should give the least privilege. So with the least privilege option, these this one best matches our requirements, in which says that the user admin can resets user password, creates and manage users and groups, including filters, right, and manage service requests and monitor service health, right? So if you take a look at these permissions, then user admin is the best option here for user one. So user one would be the user admin. And user two must be able to reset passwords for non-administrative. And if you have seen in most of the organization, help desk administrator, they can reset the passwords for non-administrator user. That means for normal users, that is the help desk administrator. Again, you can go and have a look at the full roles. You can find it. You can find them in Intune as well. Sorry, in Azure. Okay. If you see help desk admin, assign the help desk admin can reset passwords, force users to sign out, manage service requests, monitor service health. Sorry. So note that the help desk admin can only help non-admin users, and users assign these roles: directory reader, guest inviter, help desk admin, message center reader, and reports user. So here's again the full list of all admins, all types of admins, in groups, that has been given here. You can read this whole list here. I'm gonna put that in here. So I have provided two links, you can read both of them in details. Okay, so the first one is user administrator and the second one is help desk administrator. Question number 105. It's again a hotspot question and policy. So let's see what is asking in the... Okay, so he's asking on what date which device will be marked as compliant and which device on what date will be marked as non-compliant, right? So, okay, let's read the question now. You have a Microsoft Intune subscription that has the following device compliance policy settings. Mark device with no compliance policy assigned as compliant, and compliance status validity period is 14 days. So on January 1, you enroll Windows 10 devices. Now, this is very important. You have to keep this in mind that on January 1, you enroll Windows 10 devices. That means all devices. We have two devices, okay? Both of them are enrolled on January 1 in Intune, right? So we have device 1, device 2, and for device 1 the BitLocker encryption is enabled, for device 2 is disabled, for device 1 firewall is off, is turned off, and for device 2 firewall is turned on. Scope tags, we don't give attention to scope tags, uh, not important. And members of group 1. Alright, so both devices are members of group 1, there is no other group. So name policy 1, we have two policies. Policy 1 is platform Windows 10, I believe both, yeah, both for Windows 10. So the key information is in policy 1, BitLocker is required, and in policy 2, BitLocker is firewall is required. Okay, now this is also very important. Mark device non-compliant 5 days after non-compliance. So you have 5 days grace period if in 5 days the device is still compliant, even though if the BitLocker is not enabled. After 5 days the policy will be implemented, and if the BitLocker is still not configured, that means the device is not compliant. The policy 2, then policy 2 is policy 2, firewall is required, and you see mark device compliant immediately. That means the policy is implemented immediately. There is no grace period. Here we have 5 days grace period, here we don't have any grace period. Take 1 and take 2, not important. Okay, now let's see, on January uh, on January 5, you assign policy 1 and policy 2 to group 1. Okay, so that means both policies are assigned to group 1, and group 1 has two devices, device 1 and device 2. So on January 5, okay, you assign this policy. Okay, on January 1 you enrolled, on January 4 you created the policies, on January 5 you assign the policy, so your actual date begins here. Okay, now for each of the following devices, so let's go to the answer area. On January 7, device 1 is marked as compliant. Now let's go to device 1. So device 1 has BitLocker enabled, but firewall is disabled. And for firewall, we have immediate, there is no grace period. That means that device 1 is not compliant. Device 1 is not compliant. On January 7, device 1 marked as compliant, so that is no. Why? Because device 1 BitLocker is enabled, but firewall is disabled. And for firewall, there is no grace period on the as soon as the policy is received by the device becomes immediately non-compliant because there is no grace period, right? Then on January 8, device 1 is marked as compliant. On January 8, device 1 is marked as compliant. So again, device 1 is non-compliant because of the firewall. You see, firewall and firewall is mandatory, is required, and is immediately required, and the device 1 has no firewall. So again, it is no. For on January 8th, the device is not compliant. On January 8th, device 2 is marked as compliant. Now if you go to device 2, the BitLocker is disabled. BitLocker is disabled. Firewall is turned on, and if you see, for the BitLocker you still have 5 days. So that means on January 8th, device 2 is marked as compliant, which is yes, because a firewall is required, which is immediate, and the firewall is on already. That means here this device is successful, it is compliant. Here the device is not compliant, but because of this grace period, the device is compliant yet, because the device still have 5 days. Now when this device will be non-compliant? After 5 days, for example, let's count here. So on the policies were implemented on 5th of January. So on 10th of January, the device 2 will also become non-compliant. You see, but here now it is asking on January 8th. So on January 8th, the device is compliant because of the grace period. Yeah, 5 days. I hope this will be clear. So the first one is no, the second one is no, the third one is yes. Okay, again, hotspot question, and the compliance status of computer one is in red. Okay, again, the same question. I'm not going to go into much details about the devices and the groups, as you are aware about, you already know this. So okay, so you have the policies. I'm just gonna read the policies. So policy 1, require BitLocker to be enabled on the device and is assigned to group 1. Okay, mark device is not compliant after 10 days, so there is 10 days grace period. And for policy 2, requires firewall to be on and monitoring, and mark device is not compliant immediately. So almost the same grace period, but in the previous question we had 5 days, here we have 10 days. And for the firewall it's the same, immediate, and is assigned to group 2, sorry, policy 2 is assigned to group 2. At the next day, you review the compliance status of computers. So okay, it doesn't matter when did you assign the policy, but it's just asking you the very next day you are reviewing the compliance status. So if you see, let's go to the answer. The compliance status of computer 1 is in grace period. Now computer 1 is Azure AD joined, enrolled in Intune, and BitLocker is disabled, which is not a problem because for BitLocker we have 10 days grace period, and firewall is enabled. So what it says, that the compliance status of computer 1 is in grace period. Yes, of course, the compliance status of computer 1 is in grace period because of this BitLocker. firewall is already enabled. If you see firewall is computer 1, firewall is enabled, right? And firewall is enabled, and okay, this is group 1, yeah, and group 1 has computer 1 and computer 2, okay, and group 2 only have computer 3. So the policy 1 is assigned to group 1. Group 1 has computer 1 and computer 2. Computer 1 is in grace period, and computer 2 computer 2 is not asked, I believe, but a computer 2, if you see, is already compliant because both are enabled. Anyway, it's not even asking about computer 2, I believe. Okay, it's asking. Yeah, the compliance status of computer 2 is compliant. So yes, computer 2, if you see, computer 2 is a member of group 1, is a member of group 1, and the policy assigned is BitLocker. BitLocker. No, BitLocker is enabled here. BitLocker is enabled here. That means that this device is already compliant. Here the device is in grace period, even though the device, after 10 days, this device, computer 1, will become non-compliant, but in the meantime this is under grace period. uh, and computer 2 is compliant already. After 10 days it will be still compliant, but just make sure that you are checking the compliance policy, the compliance status on the very next day. Okay, so the compliance status of computer 1 is in grace period, yes. The compliance status of computer 2 is compliant, yes. And the compliance status of computer 3 is not compliant. Let's see if computer 3 is not compliant or not. Computer 3. So computer 3, okay, the policy assigned to computer 3 is a member of group 2, and the policy assigned to group 2 is required firewall to be monitoring and to be on and monitoring. Okay, and computer 3 firewall is disabled. Firewall is disabled. BitLocker is enabled and firewall is disabled. So yes, the compliance status of computer 3 is not compliant. I don't know if you can say it's not compliant or compliant, because if you see, computer 3 is not enrolled into Intune, and when it's not enrolled into Intune, that means that it does not need to be um, compliant or not compliant. So if it's not enrolled in Intune, that means that the device will be automatically marked as compliant. But if you see the answer here, it says yes, I told you this. The first one is yes, the second one is yes, the third one should also be yes, because if you say, I told you, it is not enrolled in Intune, and when it is not enrolled in Intune, that means that the policy cannot be implemented. That means the device is not managed by the organization, the device is not controlled by the organization. And when the device is not managed by the organization, that means the device is automatically compliant, which will leave the device as compliant, right? Since the policy cannot be implemented. So this one is also yes. Yes, I'm very sure this should be yes. I'm gonna mark it as yes. This one is yes, and not this one. That's perfect. Huh? Question number 107. Yeah, this one is very easy question. just discard all these information and start from here. Uh, Start from here. So when you join new Windows 10 device to controlshow.com, users are prompted to set up 4-digit PIN. You need to ensure that the users are prompted to set up a 6-digit PIN when they join the Windows 10 device to controlshow.com solution from the Microsoft Intra Admin Center, which means Azure AD. Uh, you can configure the authentication method. Does this meet the goal? So yes or no, and this is no because I told you these settings can be configured in Intune, not in Microsoft Azure AD, right? So in Intune you can configure these settings. I also have shown you in the video how to configure these settings in the previous videos. Question number 108. Um, okay, question number 108, right? So you have Microsoft 365 tenant that contains the objects shown in the following table. So these are the objects, different groups and group types, which is admin 1 is the user, group 1 Microsoft 365 group, group 2 is distribution group, group 3 is man enable security group, and group 4 is security group, right? You are creating a compliance policy named compliance 1. Which objects can you specify in compliance 1 as additional recipients for of non-compliance notifications? So let's assume you are creating a compliance policy. um, you are creating a compliance for policy for devices or for a group. So which of these types of groups you can add into that policy? Now if you go to creating a group, usually you see two options, I believe. One is the security group and one is the other group I forgot, which you can check that on your own. So that means you cannot add security group to the additional recipients. For that one you need to create another policy for the security groups. All these four sorry, these three, group 1, group 2 and group 3, they can be, you can assign one single policy to these groups depending on the situation. But group 4 is a security group, you need a separate policy for this one. You can't combine security group with these groups because I told you you have two types of groups you can create in Intune. So it is asking you which objects can you specify in compliance 1. Compliance 1 is the policy name, okay, as additional recipients of non-compliance notifications. So I told you group 1, group 2 and group 3. Now find, yeah, this one, option C, is group 1, group 2 and group 3 only. If you take a look, group 4 is security group. I told you it is treated as a completely separate group. You can't add it with other groups, you can't mix it with other group. And admin 1 is not a group, it is a user, so you can't add users. You can't make a policy that will be for users and groups. You can assign it to either groups or to users. So option C is the correct one. Then question number 109. Okay, so question number 109, it says you have an Azure AD tenant named contoso.com, which we have mostly practiced in our labs. Contoso.com is our is our Azure AD tenant that contains a user named user1. User1 has a user principal name. A user principal name is the name that we use to log in to the computer. For example, we had Alex Brown, for example. So our the user principal name was A Brown at contoso.com, and then you type the password for that one. So we had a different Brianna, I don't know the last name, so the first name or the last name. So they just took, um, for example, Alex Jones. So the Alex Jones, you can create the user principal names at A Jones, for example, A Jones at contoso.com. So here the user principal name is the same name as user1 at contoso.com. That is the user1 user principal name, which in short we call UPN. And you join the Windows 11 device named client1 to contoso.com. Now you have seen that once you would create a user, and then you would join that user with a client machine. We had some client machines, for example, um, C client 1, C client 2, uh, some other CWS1. So we would test our we would add users to those computers, right? So here is the same scenario. You join a window 11 device named client1 to contoso.com. You need to add user1 to the local administrator groups of client1. So again, um, you have two types of groups. One are the domain groups, and one are the local groups, and you also have local administrator groups, right? So how you need to add user1 to the local administrator group, while user1 um, is a domain user, but you need to add user1 to the local administrator group. How should you complete the command? Where to answer, select the appropriate. So the following is a command is given to you. You can open your cmd or PowerShell, and you can run the following command, but you have given some options which one is correct. So net account, net local group, or net user. So if you see, we are adding user1 to local groups, right? Not to accounts or not the users, we are adding them. So net local group administrators forward slash add, then then in double quotes. Now you need to specify the domain name, and the domain name, we usually, if you remember, when we would log in, we would type, for example, like this. Let me type, for example, we would type contoso, um, contoso and backslash administrator. So we would type like this, contoso slash administrator. So here we want, we don't have administrator, we don't want administrator to add to the local administrators, but we want user1 to add to the local administrator. So we can type contoso backslash user1 at the rate contoso.com. So it's the same thing. We when you are using a domain user, we don't usually write this, because here we are already specifying the domain. But on local machine, we have, for example, if we don't want to type contoso.com, so we can just type contoso backslash zero user1, which means that this user is added on the active directory, and that means on local active directory. user one comes from local Active Directory, but here user one is from domain, from the cloud um, directory Azure AD. So the idea I just wanted to give you is you can type contoso backslash user one at contoso.com. So the correct options would be net local group. Here you choose the net local group, then administrators, add contoso backslash 10 backslash sorry 1 at the rate contoso.com. I don't know what it says. Azure AD. Okay, my apologies. Okay, because Contoso, as I mentioned, it's for local directory, for Active Directory, and here, if you see that user one is a cloud user, not is a cloud account, not on the local directory, on the local Active Directory. So if it's on the cloud, that means here we will select Azure AD backslash user one at contoso.com, because user one is coming from Azure AD, not from the Contoso. Um, like I said, we write contoso slash contoso backslash contoso backslash user one, and then we type the password. So this means that user one is on the local directory, on Active Directory, right? But here user one is not on the local directory. User one is from Azure AD, from the cloud, and on the cloud even you can't say, you can't type the username as contoso for backslash user one at contoso.com. That is incorrect here, because you were mentioning the domain twice. It's this one is the local one and this is the cloud one. Yeah, so when it comes to this one, sorry, when it comes to this one, that means this is the cloud one, and for the cloud one you need to type here and the Azure. And even I have found out here, I found here that if your tenant users are created in Microsoft Intra ID, you can use net local group administrators, which is shown here, net local group administrators, then forward slash add Azure AD backslash user UPN, and user UPN is user1contoso.com. That is our user VPN, which is mentioned here. Right, so this is Azure AD, and yes, the first one is if your tenant users are synchronized from on-premises Active Directory, then you can use local group administrators add contoso slash username. So if user one was added on premises, so then we can type here contoso, yeah, contoso slash user one. Then we would not write contoso.com. Yeah, we would not write the contoso.com, we would just write user one. Yeah, contoso backslash user one. Okay, so this one is Azure AD, right? Let me correct that one as well. Okay, so this is the last question I'm gonna discuss for this video. Question number 110. You have Microsoft 365 subscription. You need to provide a user the ability security defaults and create conditional access policy. The solution must use the principle of least privilege. what which role should you assign. Now again, I'm gonna tell you, you can go to the roles I added previously. Let me see if I can find it again. Yeah, these are the roles. You can find all of these, you can read them all, and then you can choose from here: global administrator, conditional access administrator, security administrator, intune administrator. What are these rules? um, you see help desk as admin, global reader, global admin, um, billing admin. mm, let's see. Okay, search admin, service support, share teams administrator, user admin. uh, okay, you you can read here. We don't find all of them, but you can find the rest in another source maybe. So for this one, the correct answer is conditional access. Even from the name, you can see that you need to provide a user the ability, security default, and create conditional access policy. Now, the user can, the user will be able to create conditional access policy and security defaults. So, and again, you need to use the least privilege. You can't give global administrator, which has more security, more privileges, more permissions. I believe security administrators also, they have more privileges. Intune administrator, they also have I think they can manage, they can enroll or delete devices and manage devices in Intune. So conditional access administrator is the best option to choose here, and this is the correct option. Some people, let me confirm if I can get. If you Google this one, security defaults to Microsoft Intra ID, and I believe this is some information that might be of your interest. Who should use conditional access? Um, so if you are an organization with Microsoft Intra ID P1 and P2 licenses, security defaults are probably not right for you. If your organization has complex security requirements, you should consider conditional access. Um, Again, maybe you need to read the roles, all these other group types, group roles, and what can they do and what can they not do. So again, yeah, the correct answer is yeah, that is the correct option, not option C. The correct option is option B, conditional access administrator. And that's it for this question. We will continue the rest later.